What's up, Barnhill family, and welcome back to your home for all things combat sports.
Yo.
Guys, today we are dissecting the UFC 313 main event, but we're doing it from the perspective of Alex Pereira. What are the champion's 3 keys to victory? We're going to break that down for you right now. So, Nick, I think the first thing that we need to talk about with Alex, we know he's a very rhythmic fighter and pace is super important to him, but he's not the fastest guy out of the gate. He's very economical. So I think with Magomed obviously being a takedown threat, also being a striking threat in his own right with some great kicks and movement and stuff, key number 1 for me is Alex Pereira really needs to control the pace of this fight.
Yes, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. The pace that Alex Pereira likes to fight at is a slower pace, and it's not because he just likes to fight at a slower pace. When you're a bigger guy and the consequences are more severe when you're dealing with heavy strikes, 205ers that, on fight night end up weighing 225, 230, you really do have to slow everything down. And I think that actually makes the fights more enticing and intriguing because any little failure or any little mistake can cause you the whole fight. So Pereira has been able to show great patience throughout his UFC career. He can dictate the pace of the fight really well. And when he's able to do that, he usually finds his opponent unconscious on the ground. He's able to find, whether it's a kick or one of those great lead hooks, he can just put his biggest weapons on the target he needs to find when he can fight at that pace. When we see Alex get pushed backwards or, blitzed on, that's when he has to disengage from that rhythm and that pace. And I feel like most of his opponents so far have not been able to dictate the pace for long enough in the fight to actually control the fight. He'll, at times concede some stuff and maybe step back, but after a few seconds or after the flurry is over, then he's right back on to putting the pressure on. And he's really good at backing you up against the cage. And as we've realized, he can track you really well against the cage. So once he has that pace and he's got you moving backwards, because let's be honest, you can't stand in front of his shots for very long. Now he's got you up against the cage where it's even harder for you to escape some of those attacks. And I think that is the biggest key in Alex Pereira's game. So I'm glad this is the first key of the 3 keys to victory for him, because if Alex goes out there and lets Magomed control the pace of the fight, and that ultimately leads to the range of the fight and basically where the fight takes place. If Alex lets him do that, it'll be something we haven't seen before. So I'm leaning towards Alex being able to control the pace of this fight, which will lead him into a kickboxing range fight, a kind of a kickboxing style fight. And to me, that's where he has his best chance of winning. Magomed is not the biggest takedown threat. He doesn't have any submissions. He's a knockout guy. He's got really good power in his hands, but he also knows how to get his hand raised in a decision. So you do have to come in with a buttoned-up game plan, but there are definitely holes in Magomed's game that Alex can exploit if he's able to keep the fight at that pace that he likes, and then from there, all of his weapons start to open up.
Yeah, and I think patience/pace is kind of the theme for key number 1. Because I think the sweet spot for Alex in this fight, if he is going to get his hand raised, is going to be rounds 2 and 3.
Okay.
I think he's going to feel Magomed out the first round. We know Alex is not the fastest starter. Of course, if you show him an opening for that famous left hook, he's going to take it right out of the gate. But generally, Alex likes to allow himself to feel out his opponents, see what they're going to do. He's really good at feinting. He's very subtle with his feints, but he can draw reads out of his opponents, and then he starts to capitalize. Later in the rounds, with a grinder like Magomed Ankalaev, who has really good grappling skills, if it goes into rounds 4 and 5, that could favor the challenger. Even though we have seen Magomed gas somewhat in the past, I still think he has the late advantage. So I think the real sweet spot in this fight for Alex to find that finish is going to be rounds 2 and 3. And so I think him controlling the pace, getting the reads that he needs in the first round, and then deploying what he needs to deploy in rounds 2 and 3 is going to be really key for him. And I think that if he does that successfully, his chances go up much higher of getting his hand raised.
Yeah, I agree with you. And, Alex is actually very good at roping his opponents into giving him what they want, right? And that comes down to the patience and the pace that he likes to fight at. We saw him in his last title fight or last 2 title fights really start to use a jab to the body. And that was simply only so he could show a level change and then have his opponent second guess and maybe start to drop their guard a little bit. I think that's a great technique he should look for against Ankalaev, because Ankalaev isn't known for having the world's fastest kicks, right? Reaction time kicks or switch kicks to catch somebody when they are dipping down low or dropping too far to hit the body. So Alex plays it very safe. Sometimes he'll even switch stances to land that body shot, which puts his head even further away from the danger zone. So I think those are some really key points that it all comes down to the pace and the patience. If Alex is able to go out there and fight at that slow pace, at that long range that he loves to fight at, it's going to be a hard night, because that lead hook is always 2 or 3 inches away from his opponent's chin, and every time that thing lands, there's a really good chance that his opponent goes to sleep. So I do think that Alex Pereira's pace in this fight is going to be the key decider as to who wins and who gets their hand raised.
Yeah, who can dictate the pace is going to be really important. Another thing, and this is probably point number 2 for Alex as far as he's concerned and what he needs to do. Watch out when you're making your exits from the combinations and the striking exchanges. Magomed Ankalaev is really good at being in and out, and he's very linear. He can cover a lot of ground, and he does have really good takedowns. As you pointed out, he's not the biggest submission threat out there, but if he does get you to the ground, especially if it's early in a round, he can grind out a round, and he knows, as you said, how to win a decision. So what does Alex need to do? He needs to use angles, and he needs to do something that our coach, Bob Perez, says all the time: don't admire your work. Don't get in there and throw a couple of really clean shots and then stand there, even if it's just for a split second. That's called, quote unquote, admiring your work in the fight game. What he needs to do is he needs to throw his combinations, land his power, because he doesn't have to land that many shots on you to win a fight. He's just that type of special, powerful fighter. He needs to land his shots, win the exchange, and then use angles to exit and get out of range as quickly as possible, because then he can start to make Magomed chase him a little bit, and his likelihood of getting takedowns if he's chasing is much lower than if he's got the advantage, given the body orientation, with Alex still being in front of him, to just cinch up a takedown, shoot for a double or single, and transition to the back for a body lock and maybe dump Alex on the ground. So I think using his angles to exit intelligently from the combinations, as well as not sticking around too long after the combination's over, to me is key number 2.
Yeah, I love that. And this is a really important key. Everybody likes to talk about angles in MMA. We're talking about fights, and we're trying to break down fights. You have to look at how a guy finds his angles to find his attacks. But the same thing can be said with the defense. You have to know your angles on the defensive side of things. And a lot of fighters, almost everybody that starts off fighting, will retreat directly backwards. What you first start doing is you land your combo, and then you sit there and wait in front of them like, man, I can't believe that worked. And then they hit you back. Then you quickly realize, all right, if I'm going to land my combo, I need to get the heck out of there. So you do that, but you start moving straight backwards. And the evolution of a fighter is, okay, now that I'm not getting hit when I'm standing there, they're blitzing towards me after the shot, and I'm still getting hit. So you make put your offense on them, and then create an angle to get away. Alex is very good with his angles. We've seen him fight some open stance fights, and generally that lead leg that he likes to just whip up and kick people with isn't as available in the open stance, but he's able to find an angle good enough. And then, of course, he doesn't telegraph the kick very much, so he's able to find success with that. And that's just a little look into Alex's complex thoughts on the angles. He's very good with that, but the defensive angles are kind of what we're talking about with this. When it comes to admiring your own work, you definitely never want to sit in the pocket, but if there's anybody that can sit in a firefight at the heavier weight classes, it's Alex Pereira. He's able to use those big shoulders that he has, which is almost like a modified Philly shell, and he'll just let punches sort of graze off of them. Some punches even graze off his head, which I would never recommend that for a fighter, but Alex does what he does really well. He rolls with punches so well. He knows how to absorb and turn into punches. So I don't think that's as big of an issue. And I think as long as he can rope Magomed into chasing him after he lands his offense. Shortly after that, Magomed will start to get angry. He'll blitz more aggressively, and then more of the targets will be open for Alex. So I think that's a really, really key point, that he needs to not admire his work, but after a couple of rounds, once he's got Magomed frustrated because he's not able to score on the counter, then maybe find that famous Alex Pereira on Instagram, famous Alex Pereira on the Instagram stories, where he's just doing basically 1-for-1 sparring with people and trading shot for shot. That kind of stuff is okay for Alex to do later in the fight, but I wouldn't do it until later on, once you've got Magomed a little bit second-guessing his blitzing, second-guessing his offensive attacks, and getting a little bit frustrated.
Yeah, I think he needs to defend a takedown or two from Magomed for him to feel confident enough to do that, to stay in the pocket. So if I could caveat this point a little bit, it would be to say it's going to be really important early on to do this, to not just be there as a sitting target, because Magomed, even if you're winning the striking exchanges, he's got a high likelihood of being able to get you to the ground. And while I don't think I think Magomed's clear path to victory here is a decision. Yeah. I really think that if he wins, it's going to be by decision, because 4 of the 5 rounds he's able to get Alex down, wear him down, and do some damage on the ground. I don't think he's going to finish Alex on the ground. I definitely don't think he's going to submit him, but he is a very real threat when it comes to sucking up time on the clock, taking Alex away from what he does best, which is striking on the feet. And so early on in the fight, until Alex gets his reads, he needs to be very careful to not stay in range after he lands his combination, because that can completely negate a good combo, right? You land a 1-2-3, finish it with a kick or something like that, and you do a little bit of damage, but Magomed's still standing in front of you, and then you allow him to close the distance and take you down for 2 minutes. The trade-off there, that was probably won by Magomed in that scenario. So what I think he needs to do is make sure he keeps it on the feet, and the best way he can do that is to escape using his angles and intelligently, getting out of range after he lands his shots.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'm not actually convinced that I'm going to see a whole lot of grappling out of Ankalaev. I think he's going to go out there and do what he likes to do, is strike with people. Unless he's convinced he can't strike with Alex, after 2 or 3 rounds, then he'll start to look for takedowns. But again, I don't think, being a 205 or a guy of his stature, he's not going to be shooting for blast doubles, or he's not going to be trying to grab a single. Alex's takedown defense is actually getting pretty good. His best way to get Alex to the ground, and I think there's a good chance that we see him have success if he does get Alex to the ground. The best way he has to get Alex to the ground is for him to get him up to the cage, start to work a little bit of dirty boxing, get nasty in there, throw some knees, make Alex think about all aspects, defend his legs, make sure he's watching his body, make sure his back is up against the cage so you can try to start dragging him down, but then all the while throw punches too. This is the true mixing of the martial arts. I won't talk about it too much, but fight night last night was incredible. Everybody was just finishing everybody, and you saw that kind of electricity in the air that night. So I think that's a very important aspect for Magomed, because when you see that electricity and the evolution of the sport, where people are throwing really crisp combinations and then shooting, or even just going to touch a leg so you can react to it, and then they come back up with more strikes. Those are the types of MMA-centric combinations that Magomed needs to utilize. Look, you don't have to, your combinations don't have to be just hands to a kick or kicks to a hand or hands exclusively. Throw your hands, fade a shot, throw your hands, and then commit to a shot, make him defend it a little bit, and then come back up with an uppercut. There's all sorts of options now with the way people are mixing the martial arts and the creativity of these combinations, that I think Magomed does have the opportunity to force Alex out of the pace and out of the style of fight that he wants. And to me, we'll get into that whole thing, because I've got some pretty interesting points that contradict what we're talking about for Alex in this fight. But it's going to be very interesting when we break down the keys to Magomed versus the keys to Alex, because I really do think a couple of these key factors are what is going to be the reason one of these guys wins the fight.
Definitely. And guys, before we give you our third and final key to victory for Alex Pereira, we are razor close to that 10,000 subscriber mark. Thank you guys so much who watch this channel and subscribe, but we got a problem. We've noticed that most of you that watch our videos actually aren't subscribed to the channel.
What's up with that?
Guys, if you're enjoying our content and you're finding value out of this channel, we really appreciate a subscribe. It's totally free and it helps us tremendously. Back to the video. So Nick, for me, this is the key that I think may be the most important, because it's, I think, the key that will allow Alex to find the kill shot.
Okay.
if he is to get a knockout victory. And I think his best path to victory here is to knock out Magomed Ankalaev.
I agree.
And that is one thing I noticed when I was going back and watching Ankalaev fights is he has the propensity to load up on his power hand right before he throws it.
Yes.
And he does it when he's almost biting on a feint. So when the fighter that he's competing against starts to feint or starts to throw something, you can see him load up on that too before he throws it.
Right.
If Alex, so the point is, key number 3, if you will, Alex needs to use intelligent feints to draw the straight out of Magomed Ankalaev, because they're going to be same stance. A lot of people that Alex fights, he fights an open stance.
Right.
This is going to be a same stance sort of situation. So he's going to be further away from the chin with that lead hook.
Right.
How do you negate that? You draw a straight out of your opponent. He needs to feint really well, really intelligently to draw that power straight out of Magomed, make him commit to it, and counter with the hook.
Right.
If he can do that, I think that's his best shot at getting a knockout. Obviously, we saw the switch kick against Yuri Prohaska. He needs to work that. He needs to work low calf kick, especially on a fighter that's going to power forward and try to take you down. Neutralizing the leg by powering that kick to the calf is helpful. But if Alex is going to get the win, in my opinion, he needs to get the knockout. And the best way for him to do that is with that signature left hook, and he needs to draw some strikes out of Magomed in order to land it.
I agree. And this is such a good point. So that lead hook is obviously like his, every one of his opponent's kryptonite. You just can't handle taking that shot. And the crazy thing about it is he doesn't load it up. We're talking about Magomed loading up that too. Alex's lead hook is very, very minimal as far as what he has to do to generate enough power to knock you out. He can just get it right inside. He can even be leaning backwards, which, generally can make the punch a little bit weaker. And his balance isn't always 100% when he throws it, but it's always powerful when he lands it. So I think I'm going to kind of add on to your point a little bit, because yes, I think that lead hook is very important. And if you want to get it, you do need Magomed to cross the plane. And once he's there, then you've got him compromised with balance, and you can probably land that lead hook. But Magomed does like to blitz a little bit, and sometimes when you're trying to get a range or get a feel on the range of your opponent when they come in, and when you're trying to find that lead hook that's so devastating, occasionally those blitzes can come a little bit faster or slower than you're anticipating, and that can lead you to missing that hook. Now, if that happens, I would really consider heavily, if I was Alex Pereira in his corner, to look for some immediate clinch work. Let's say you overshoot the hook and it goes beyond Ankalaev's head. At that point, you're halfway to a tie plum. You need to go ahead, grab it, throw a couple of knees before you guys settle into a position likely against the cage. Start to make it vicious. You've got good elbows from the inside. You're going to be a little bit taller of an opponent. I know Magomed's a big guy and a strong guy, but Alex is every bit of 6'5" and fills out that frame to about 230 on fight night. So he's going to be a very big guy, and his clinch work is really good. So I think that lead hook is obviously a major key to victory, but I think that if he's not able to find success just landing it on the target, that clinch will open up for him greatly because of Magomed's blitzing.
Yeah, and I think if you were to add one more thing to this key, it would be that if you're not doing, because obviously you can't just feint the whole fight. You have to lead the dance. You have to initiate at some point. That would be to use that hook, to pepper that hook into the combination.
Absolutely.
Because when you think about how he knocked out Sean Strickland, for example, just the first example that comes to mind, it was a one single shot hook. Boom. Took him down. Whereas like with Magomed, seeing as it's going to be a little bit more difficult because of the body orientation and everything to get that kill shot right out of the gate, if he can pepper that hook in as the second or third shot in the combination, one that works really well for him too is the 2-3.
Yeah.
The straight and then the hook. So he could hit them with the straight to kind of pop the head up and then try to hit him with the hook over the top. Another thing he could do is, a jab, kick to the body, then throw the hook, something like that allows him to pepper that hook in, and where it's not just a single shot, that's going to increase the likelihood of him landing it.